Um, Paul, first of all, before we get right into it, do you have any questions for me?
Is there anything that you have?
Okay, perfect. To be honest, I wanna start with finances because I just got off the phone with your colleague up in New York, Pat Foy,
Mm-hmm.
and as you've probably seen, it seems like they're in a financial trouble up there. They say over the next 5 years they would require up to $16 billion. And so I want to ask you, flat out. Obviously, this has caused a huge decrease in riderships this pandemic. How has WMATA, fared over the whole, what is it now, 4 months, 5 months?
Sure. Let me just step back if I could first, HJ. I mean, as transit agencies around the country, we're all under financial stress pre-COVID, right? We all have, major capital needs that we have, and there's different service pressures we're always under to provide more service. So as you can imagine, then losing revenues just to do sort of to keep where we were has had a tremendous impact. I think we've been very fortunate. I know in this region we have with the CARES Act, it provided us quite a bit of dollars to basically keep people employed, keep them out there serving those essential employees that need to get to work, that need to get to hospitals, that needed to, the people that support hospitals, whether it's in maintenance or whatever it is, or in food service. So that's been very important. So we've been very fortunate that way. Unfortunately, I think we're all seeing this isn't something that we're going to pull out of very quickly. So additional federal funding, I think we all need. I think it's recognized that, the local governments are strapped in terms of all the things that they're losing from their local economy, and all their base revenue sources are going down. Unlike other properties in the country, we don't have our own direct source of funds. We rely on subsidies from the Maryland, the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the District of Columbia, and that comes from different sources, whether it's general fund or transportation-related funds, and they're under tremendous stress. So I can't stress enough the need for additional federal dollars. I know they're debating that right now in Washington, and I think it's important for the future of this country, for the future of major urban areas in this country, that transit remain the player it is in terms of just moving people and all the other benefits it provides in terms of whether it's environmental, whether it's congestion relief, whatever it is. That's what transit does, and it moves lots of people in a very short period of time, and we need to make sure that we support that investment.
And if you can share it, does WMATA have a number at the moment?
Yeah, no, we have some numbers. They change, to be frank, meaning depending on what's going on the revenue side. Several months ago, we were, assuming some things would start to occur in the future. Right now, we're starting to reassess that. In late May, mid-May, things were starting to move in a certain direction with reopening. I think over the last month or so, I think both WMATA here and other properties are taking a hard look at that. So I can't give you an exact number because, to be frank, it's changing. It's significant. It's very significant, as you can imagine. We're down almost 95%, in terms of revenues, in that ballpark, 90%. So to recoup those dollars, historically, we get about $800 million a year in revenue that supports the system, primarily from fares, some of it's commercial enterprises, but they're all down, in the 90% range. So you can imagine the scale of those numbers.
Following up on that, you mentioned that all transport companies really need federal funding to stay afloat. I'm wondering, how confident are you that Congress will, put something together that will help, the transit networks across the country? And second, if that doesn't come through, when I talked to Pat Foy, he mentioned that, well, they have to look at every option then, from cutting services to, hiking fares to whatever they can do. Is that something you have to, put on the table at least as well?
Yeah, on the first issue, I mean, I am sort of positive on it, on something happening, because remember, transit isn't just large urban areas. Transit provides service in lots of communities throughout this country for different needs, for different demand across the country. But the reality, it plays a central role in very small communities and very large communities like Washington or New York, for sure. So I think we're all under that stress, and I think that's hopefully will carry the day that this is something that is a national need and not just an urban environment need. In terms of, yes, of course, we are going to have to look at lots of things. We have done things, to be frank, to reduce our cost where we can. At the same time, provide the essential service. So we will continue to do that. If the monies don't come through, yes, it gets fairly drastic fairly quickly because we have no other place to turn. To be frank, again, the local economies are hurting so much. Their cupboard is near bare. The revenue side from the riders is not there. So we need this this assistance to get us through this. I think long term. It supports everything that is important. I think at so many levels for the communities that we serve. So I think it's very important that we get those dollars potentially as quickly as possible.
When you reduce, especially the frequency of services, the majority of people who use public transport in this country, not the high earners, middle class to low income households. How do you balance, generating revenue, staying afloat, but also, not hurting the ones who already hurt the most?
That is a huge challenge for us. We do serve a very diverse population, economically, socially, and those that have the opportunity to telework, that's great for them. There's a lot of people that don't do that, and they're the people that support a lot of what those people that do have the option to telework need. Whether it's the food, whether it's the gas station, you name it, those are the people that support that provide that base for those other activities. But in a region like ours, we have almost 45% of the people take transit to downtown, in effect to the core of the area. So it's much more than just people that have no other choice, or at the end of the spectrum. There are a lot of people that do this for lots of other reasons. They made housing commitments, they made life commitments, in terms of their own budgets on using transit to support their way of life and what they've chosen. And I think we're there to do that, and that's an important role. And I think we still need to be there. So I think it's doing both. It's doing all of the above. We have to serve those that need us, that maybe don't have options, but we need to serve those that choose to use us because of the other things they're choosing us for. Whether it's the convenience of it, whether it's they're worried about their carbon footprint, whether they're where they live and the choices they've made there. I think all important reasons of why people use transit, and I think that continues.
When you look at the current situation and all the struggles that come with it, do you also see opportunities, that this situation provides in maybe, when you look at innovations or reconfiguring how the transit system in the DC area works?
Yes, definitely. I mean, in our area, the Mayor Bowser has done a tremendous job. She's put out recently additional bus lanes where she's aggressively providing car-free lanes, in effect, which provides both bus and bike and other means of basically using the footprint of the roadway most efficiently. That does tremendous for us. It helps us with social distancing under the current environment because we can run buses more frequently, turn them around quicker, which then means we can reduce the stress of overcrowding buses. So that's fantastic. She's been a leader in that in this region, and we appreciate everything that they're doing in that arena. One of the things that we're looking at is contactless fares, in effect. So you never have to touch any of our machines, whether it's a fare box or the turnstile, for instance, going to something that you just use your phone and you wave it nearby and you go through. So there are things like that we can do for sure. And we will continue to do that. We're doing some things, obviously, on the cleaning side, where we're looking at different technologies to do that, which will serve us both short term and potentially long term, and save us dollars in the future.
You mentioned that obviously, especially the younger generation, especially millennials and younger, they care a lot about, or a lot more about their carbon footprint than maybe the older generation. I'm wondering. Obviously public transport, has a huge opportunity when it comes to that. I know that you guys have been on the forefront when it comes to that, partnering with renewable energy and other areas. I'm wondering, where do you see, do you think there should be a bigger marketing push when it comes to how clean and environmental friendly public transport is? Yes,
I think, we all need to do a better job on that. I think right now, everyone clearly is focused on the immediate issues they're worried about, with the fear of the virus. So, but as we move out of that, I think this is a great opportunity to reinforce what transit means, both in communities like Washington and in general. I mean, the reality is in large urban areas, people are choosing to live in large urban areas for lots of reasons. They want the interaction of other people. That's one of the things they want. They want the culture experiences that they have there. And that's where transit works very well, because it can move very, very many people, thousands of people in a very short period of time, whether it's to a major event, whether it's to a baseball game, you name it. And that's what it does very well. And that's what we've seen in this, this area where people have chosen to live in this environment. They've chosen not to have cars in a lot of cases because they just want that ability to jump on a bike, jump on a train, jump on a bus, and live. And that's what, so I think it's a great opportunity for us to reinforce. That's why we're here. And then of course we serve those that don't have the luxuries that other people have, and making sure that we're protecting them and keeping them part of society as well.
I think final question that I have for you is, when we look at, the post-COVID future of public transport in the DC metro area, where do you see the biggest changes that have to be done to get more people in the buses, in the rails, or on the rail, and basically take advantage of maybe this shift that you mentioned, sure. Where people just not choose to have cars anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've heard the term, getting back to normal, and other people are talking about getting to a better normal. So, when we think post-COVID, do we want to go back to an hour and a half type of commute stuck in cars? Is that what, we really want? Or do we want to keep, propelling us towards, some of the climate issues that we were propelling ourselves to? And, even a sense of community that I feel that when I've interacted in my own community and when I see in other communities where people are interacting more because they're spending the time, one of the big things people talk about with teleworking is they have the time to do things. And that's what transit can do, because it can get you out of your car where you're spending maybe 2 to 3 hours a day just wasted away, not doing those things that you're enjoying now with all the other pressures you're dealing with now with the pandemic. I think that is a little bit of a silver lining people do see. They've seen the reconnection to community. They've seen the beauty of being able to walk places. And so transit provides that connection. So I think we have to focus on that going forward. And then just the underlying things that transit supports. Air quality, the quality of the water that we have, you name it, that's what transit does, besides just providing connections between A and B. So I think we have to, really, as a transit agency, as transit industry, and I think as a public discussion, there's a lot of value that transit brings that we don't want to start to say, wait a minute, it doesn't work because of, what we're going through now. Let me just, if I could, just very quickly, we have one more minute. I was the head of Baltimore Washington International Airport, and I was there for almost 10 years. I came there right after 9/11 in the spring of 2002. And at that time, we were still dealing obviously with all the fear of terrorism. We were just setting up the TSA. We were the first TSA checkpoint in the country. We had the price of aviation fuel was $1.20 a barrel at the time. And we had SARS. It was what at that time was called the perfect storm. And the aviation industry was under tremendous stress. And the talk at that time was, never come back. It'll take years and years for it to come back, if ever. The reality was within a year, I was building a 26-gate terminal for Southwest Airlines to expand their business. So things change very quickly. Those core, benefits of aviation or of transit, they haven't disappeared, right? They're going to come back. We will get through this. And when we do, we want to make us stronger as we do that. So I think that gets to your earlier point. Let's make sure that we look at this as an opportunity to basically build on what works well with transit, what we can improve on transit, and make it more of the community good that it is for the entire community.
I think you just made a really interesting point there when you talked about your time at BWI. I'm wondering then, when you think about, as we move forward out of this pandemic, do you think it's going to be the safety aspect, that will keep people from, returning to mass transit? Or do you think it's the economic aspect, that people just don't have disposable income, not even for public transit?
I think initially it could be all the above, to be frank. But again, I'm coming at it from a little bit longer term perspective. That longer term could turn fairly quickly. I mean, people. So as we pull out of this and as we deal with the safety, that aspect of it where people feel comfortable using this, there are a lot of people that are hurting out there financially, and transit offers an economical way of moving about. So I think we got to play to that as well. So I think it will be more attractive to those people. I mean, there are people that are stressed, about meeting mortgages, making car payments. Well, all those things aren't magically going to go away, as this thing gets under control from a virus perspective. I personally believe there's a little bit longer term issues that are going to have to be solved. And I think transit, again, offers that backstop for when you're in those conditions. But more importantly, it offers opportunity when you have dollars, but you choose to use transit for lots of other reasons.
Do you think those reports that we see out there, not just for airline industry, but also for public transit, that, ridership numbers may not return to pre-COVID numbers for several years? Do you think they're a little bit too pessimistic?
I do. I do. And again, I'll use the BWI example. At that time, believe me, we were under those same type of pressures. We were thinking about, reducing the program, reducing services, you name it. That's what we were all doing. And that turned very, very quickly as the public, as they assessed the risk, as they decided, no, I'm going to move around, right? That's what I'm going to do. And that's what they started to do. And I think the same thing will play out here as the virus itself, as we get better control over that, a better understanding of it, as that plays out, and that will over time. We know that will. As that gets tighter and tighter, I think the energy will be around the other side. Look, I want to get back to living my life as I've lived it. There's certain things I learned during this pandemic, and they're going to change some of my behavior across the spectrum of things. But I think on transit, I think can be a positive change and not a negative change.
Perfect. Paul, that would be from my side. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything you would like to add when we talk about public transit in the DC area post-COVID?
I think for us, there's been a commitment by this region across the region, from the political level, from all sides of the aisle there, that transit is very important in this region. The number of people it serves, what has helped in terms of economic development. We're ready to open up a new expansion of the Silver Line out to Dulles Airport. That is a key economic project for them. In Maryland, we just did today, the board approved a major investment at New Carrollton Station that basically defines that community. So I think all those are going to fall in place and we'll continue to pursue. And that's our job. And that's what we want to do.
Perfect. Once again, I appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe and good luck with everything.
Will do, AJ. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we are clear of HJ. That was excellent. Lynn, do you want to say anything before we bring the boys in?
Absolutely not. There's not one more thing I can say. That was brilliant. You're very on today. Just keep rolling. Keep going. Don't do anything.
Awesome. Here we go.
Justin, Jordan.
Gentlemen,
hey,
good afternoon. How are you guys?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Hey, it's been a long day.
Yeah.
Thanks for your patience. And Justin, you might be muted.
I think I'm unmuted.
Oh, there you go. Yep.
Good.
Very good. How you doing,
Hey,
sir?
Justin, how you doing, sir?
Good.
Jordan, is that a new look I'm looking at there?
I don't have to go anywhere anymore. I don't see people. So yeah, it's for myself more than others. Yeah.
You're saying you always wanted a mustache.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting.
Do it while we can.
Believe me, I know.
Yeah.
Jordan, just for you, I am recording locally off that Yeti mic, so we'll send you a locally recorded in addition to what you capture on your side.
Perfect.
All right, we're ready to dive in whenever you are.
Okay, well, I'll start if you don't mind. Paul, you heard the board members express the most concern that I've heard, overcrowding and issues like that. You have said operating Metro is like, a super tanker with 12,000 employees, and you have a union and union contracts that you have to deal with. But, obviously you have already some bus routes that are overcrowded, and now, the board members are concerned about platforms and things like that. How confident are you that you can address something that is so, things are moving so changing at the minute? You've got the coronavirus is going up, schools might close now, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Right. Well, I mean, as you know, Justin, we try to set out very early sort of our view of the world, right, of how this would play out as best we could, given the information we all knew. But we felt it was important, back then to come out with a plan to say, look, here's how we're thinking about this. And it's interesting, at one point we were moving pretty close to where everything was starting to roll, right? In early May, it was looked like, okay, well, kids are coming back. Business, things started to open up a little bit. Our plan was to start to, in October, we moved that up to August. We were moving in that direction, getting ready for that. And we put things in place. We had to work with the unions to do that, for instance. And so we did picks and all the stuff that it takes to support that. And then lo and behold, right, the last month, things are, starting to send some other signals. So we can't just all of a sudden flip all that, right? We got 12,000 people that have made decisions, in their livelihoods, and, that's how this works, which is fine. So that's where we are. I think we're in a good place, meaning as we get into August. Right now we were under some stress. To be frank, I think that stress has backed off a little bit. We've done some things where we've tried to use whatever tools we do have, whether it's what we call an extra board or strategics. There's buses we keep in abeyance in case somebody breaks down, we can run them out there. So we're trying to do that to deal with immediate crowding issues. But we also have to recognize that it's not realistic to think that we're going to provide, social distancing at 6 feet for all of our system. It's just not practical. Unless people just don't come, right? Then you can do that. But as the demand builds, that's not what transit does. Transit puts lots of people together in short segments and then gets them off. That's what it does. So I think in August we'll be in a better place. I think we're doing some things now to get us there. But mid-August, we're going to have a lot of capacity out there. It'll give people the opportunity to self distance themselves where they feel comfortable, and then they can make some choices. So if a train comes in very crowded, they know they don't have to wait 20 minutes. They can wait a much shorter time if they choose to do that, or they don't. And I think that's decisions we're all making no matter where we go now. Even the grocery stores or whatever, at one time I remember going there and you would see, 10 people, but now you see a lot more people. They may distance a little bit when they get to the counter, but the reality is they're interacting, along the way. So I think we're doing our best we can right now, given everything we've got. And we have to remain as flexible as we can within the construct of, how do you move all these things, at one time. So we will continue to do our best to do that.
Great.
Paul, has there been, I know there's been a number of cleanings at stations and that sort of thing. Are you guys able to track passengers that may have COVID, and if there's been any transmission in the system?
I have not. We're focusing obviously on our employees. So we have, because we have a mechanism to do that. We have not. I don't know if Dan has anything more specific, but we're not doing anything directly with that. We may learn of people. We may get an email or something like that. But I'm not sure how you say that's where you got it. Obviously, if we have someone that gets sick or feels sick in our system, one of our employees, we ask them to stay home immediately. Go to your doctor, find out what's going on, and let's deal with it. Obviously, it's a little bit harder for someone that gets on, for a vehicle for 20 minutes and gets off. Yeah, I don't know how we would do that.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is the responsibility for contact tracing remains with the public health authorities in the jurisdiction. So the philosophy of the pandemic task force here at Metro has been to assist them in those efforts, specifically with regard to our employees, which is the population that we can, that we have the greatest control over. We stand ready and willing to assist any health authority that needs information. And in fact, in the very first case in the region that happened, at the adult care center in Rockville, as I recall, it seems like, years ago. But in that case, we were, able to get some good information working with the health department in Montgomery County and at the state level in Maryland to assess, whether or not Metro Access customers, it was a Metro Access vehicle that, served that facility, whether or not there was potential exposure there back when contact tracing was something that, was possible given the scale.
And oh, sorry, Justin. Go.
No, go ahead, Jordan. You got it.
And I think maybe it was Joe or somebody mentioned during the meeting today that there's, I think, 23 routes, or I can't remember the exact number. Yeah, 21 routes. I've always had trouble finding where new services announced, that sort of thing. Do we know which routes, or can we get a list of?
We can get you that. Yeah,
okay.
I'll get you that.
Paul, how are these 500,000 masks going to be handed out exactly?
Yeah. So the challenge that we face, as we get those is we're looking to individually wrap those, right? Because people start touching them, either our employees or someone else. There's all of a sudden, there's potential issues there, but also just the perception from people. So I get it. So that's been one of the things that we've been working on is how do we do that where we can individually wrap them. So the plan right now is to get them individually wrapped, have them at our major stations and major transfer points in bus at the start, and basically allow people to take one as they see fit, and hopefully, we're hoping people self-police, the idea isn't here that you take, 50 of them. The idea is like you forgot it and you need one, or, for whatever reason. So, we just do that. So that's the plan. We give them today to our police in case they encounter anyone, they offer it. But the idea is to get them out, to the customers as quickly as we can, but as safely as we can. And then also the same way with, hand sanitizing, we're working through that. We're doing some tests on that. There's, just logistical issues, when you try to do that on the scale we're doing it. How do you do that where, you put something up that doesn't get knocked over, just some basic things that you got to deal with. It's not like a little pump thing that you have on the counter, at a 7-Eleven. It's not, it's a different animal for us. So anyway, so that's what we're working through. We'll get that out there in sometime in August, and we'll adjust, we'll learn along the way what's working well, what's not, and we'll do that. But we want to just offer it. We're hoping that people obviously are doing it on their own. I mean, with the mayor just put out, particularly in the district, that, hey, if you go outside, you're wearing a mask. So hopefully, they haven't gotten that far to the transit line that they need one. But if they do, we want to have them there.
Will the sanitizer be on buses, rail cars, or at stations? Or
we're looking at all the above. But again, logistically, how do you do that? There's even some issues with sanitizers. They're very high alcohol content. So there's even issues with that. If you have large volumes of that, is an issue in a closed environment, for instance. So there's things that, maybe you don't think about, that normally you wouldn't think about, but that we've got to really think through before we just say, all right, let's put a 50-gallon drum of this down somewhere. But that's not how we can do this.
On those masks, so they're from the DOT or FTA,
and some that we bought as well.
I was going to say, were the ones from FTA just given? I think I saw in their release that they are just providing those to different areas, no cost.
Yes.
Gotcha. And I have seen a lot of reports on social media, people tweeting at like Metro Rail info about, I'm on the bus or train and see 4 people without masks, that sort of thing. And I know that the whole goal has been to not have confrontations. Has there been any issues with, trying to get people to wear masks or anything like that?
I think the vast majority of people, no. Our philosophy is sort of compliance without conflict, right? I mean, I think that is a very slippery slope that none of us want to go down to. But, my personal view of this, and also my view as the head of the agency, is look, we are all in this together. And I don't care, whether you're using us or whether you're going to the corner grocery store, it is, to me, it's just basic, as part of a community, you're part of this community. And you should be protecting yourself. You should be protecting your family. You should be protecting the person next to you, regardless. And you expect the same from them, right? That doesn't mean that there won't be people on the fringes. I get that. but that's not, we don't focus on the fringes, right? We have to focus on what most people want to do. And, my feeling is, that's what we should be focusing on. Look, this is a societal issue that we all have to wrestle with. Do your part. We're going to try to help you where we can, with the mass distribution, whatever we can. But, this is something that individually you should all take on. And I just, I personally feel that way. And I feel as an agency, that's what we should be stressing. We shouldn't be stressing, if you don't do this, we're going to do X, Y, and Z to you. I don't think that's the way to go. I think we got to reinforce, no, you're a part of this. We're a part of this. We all want to get this thing back up and run as best we can. Let's all do our part. And I think that's the core message we should all be hitting upon. And yes, there will be the onesies and twosies, as there always are.
Paul, a question that I think was board member Letourneau brought up was that if the district decides not to have kids in physical classes, whether you could pull back. And my question to that is, wouldn't you just prefer to sort of leave the system running into when you get a vaccine or not, just to keep adequate spacing? Or, would the budget, as well as protecting your own workers, be of concern that you would probably likely pull back if the district decides not to send kids to school this fall?
Sure. I don't think it'll be one factor, whether the schools do or don't, or the district. I mean, we already know what Montgomery, Prince George, and Fairfax are doing. I don't think it's one factor. I think it's the combination of all the factors that we're wrestling with that will then, again, as I mentioned earlier, we have to constantly reassess this. And then when we make a decision, it doesn't happen overnight. So if we see, okay, well, look, this thing is, going in this direction, now let's start to move, to adjust to that. So that's, I can't give you a specific, there's a point where we do X, Y, and Z because of this, but I think we got to take a look at all. But part of it, and to the larger really issue that you're getting to, which is just financially, I mean, that's, at the end of the day, we're dependent upon the finances of the state of Maryland, the Commonwealth of Virginia, the local governments in Virginia, and the district. And they're under tremendous, tremendous stress. So at the one hand, they want to obviously, provide this essential service. They don't want us to, lay off a lot of people and create other issues. But on the other hand, they're under this pressure. So that just drives home the importance of that federal dollars. I mean, we're very fortunate to have the CARES Act, and that's going to carry us for a good part of this, this calendar year. But as we look to the future and as these things change, we really need that second effort that they're working on right now on the Hill. And so, I think, all of us, both here and nationally, that's a very, very big deal for us. If we don't get those dollars, and I mean, it's not just us. There's lots of other industries that are in the same boat. But the reality is we need the federal government support to make this happen, because the local governments don't have it. They're going the wrong way, revenue-wise. We're going the wrong way revenue-wise from a fare box recovery and a fare box and a commercial aspect. So I think that's just, it is so important that we get those dollars to keep this thing going. It's not a forever ask, but I think we're just in such unique times. We need those dollars. And by the way, I mean, our delegation locally has been fantastic on this. I mean, I'm not, I'm preaching the choir there. I mean, they get it. They're out there leading this effort. I'm just hoping that we can get to an agreement on that.
I had one more question on the additional buses that were added. I know that you say that, getting the workers, their schedules and the picks and all that stuff. But someone pointed out that I think this bus was previously, or this edition, I hadn't heard about until today. So how did that come about? Is this, why can we do this, but not,
Sure.
add more service and,
Sure. I mean, I think we do have to step back and think of it from, the people side of it first. Our employees are going through a lot of the same stresses that everyone else is, right? So, the number of people that we have has changed as this thing has moved along. So that's given us a little bit more flexibility. But, remember 4 months ago, and where some of the hot spots is where a lot of our employees, particularly our bus operators, live, our bus mechanics live. So that's a reality that we had to deal with. So it'd be one thing if we had our complete workforce and all we were doing is, moving them around. We were under tremendous stress there. And we were basically directing people that if you are sick, if you feel sick, go to your doctor, do not come in, right? And I think there, you know, the downside of that is maybe, you know, we couldn't provide as much as we wanted. The upside is I think we've done a very good job, you know, knock on wood, right, of protecting our employees, which then protects how we can deliver service. So and then, you know, with childcare issues, with other family issues, again, they're not immune to those same issues that everybody else is feeling. And to be frank, the school issue is something that we now have to start to wrestle with. You know, 2 months ago, we were thinking, okay, well, schools are coming back. You know, that part of my workforce that has to deal with those issues, that's one less pressure on them and one less thing they've got to deal with, right? Well, now that's back on their plate. So that's, you know, that's part of the reasons why we've been able to do some things now, because that workforce has built up a bit because of things have settled down. But we also have, you know, some storm clouds in the future for sure.
Yeah, and Jordan, I would just add to that. You know, I think the reason, and I will get you the details on this, but when you use strategic buses to, you know, to add service, oftentimes it's not advertised. It's you know, you're adding capacity on lines that already run on what we would call a you know, a headway-based schedule. So like the super high capacity lines, I suspect, is what we're talking about when we're talking about the 21 routes that are getting some additional buses. It is, you know, it's about putting capacity out there, not necessarily to be more frequent, but to make sure there's enough space for riders to address, you know, the capacity constraints on those really high ridership lines.
The other example, the other way to think about that might be easier, is the gap trains we provide, right?
Exactly.
You know, when we have a baseball game, we don't advertise that we're going to be running the trains this way, but what we do is we hold trains back. As this thing starts to build up, we run trains there. And Joe mentioned today, that's the same concept we're going to do as we monitor what's happening. Because one of the questions was, well, how do you deal with crowding at stations? Well, the reality is, you know, as we start to see that, monitor that, then we'll start to say, well, let's put a gap train there, have it ready to roll. So if we see gallery place, you know, loading up for some reason, we'll run a train there, clear it out, you know, and get some rhythm going. So that's how I mean, that's the same concept we're doing on the bus right now.
And I would, you know, the one other point is, you know, a lot of people like to compare to the innovation that a number of other transit agencies are trying, and we certainly are looking at those same things. Andrew brought it up in the RAC report out today about, you know, what Pittsburgh was doing and so forth. You know, we're also looking at what's happening, for example, at our peer agencies overseas that are in more advanced phases of this, right? The transit agencies of Europe have gone through this, and for those transit agencies that tried putting down, you know, for example, you know, decals on the floor to you know, space people out, what they found was that was an exercise in futility. In many cases, pulling them up. So you know, so we're not just monitoring, you know, what's happening here in the States, but also you know, perhaps with, you know, the benefit of actual of you know, being a little bit farther along in the COVID experience, transit agencies overseas.
Okay. Anything else, guys?
Just one quick question on the airport, on the National Airport station. Didn't get a chance to read that full release yet, but walk me through the kind of decision making on moving that up.
I mean, Dan can give you more details on the specifics of it, but in general, where we are looking for, where there's, in that case, I think it was as much the issues that we're facing out there, the physical issues that we wanted to take advantage and get out there and deal with them now, was that I think we did some things and we learned that it was maybe a little bit tougher than we thought of some of the issues out there. So we want to get on top of it. But in general, we are looking for opportunities, just given where we are, obviously, with ridership. If there's a chance to get in there and do something that would disrupt people as we're really trying to ramp back up and bring people back, you know, we don't want to be doing that as much, you know, we want to minimize as much as we can. So that was an opportunity. But I think that one, if I recall, was almost was physically driven, that, hey, we've done some other investigations of that issue, and we wanted to get on it much quicker than we thought we would have to.
Yeah, Jordan, and if you go back and you look at the original rollout for the platform project, National Airport has always been its own entity, the reason being of what, maybe 3 stations, perhaps 4, that have the benefit of 3 tracks through the station. And so because you have 3 tracks through the station, that means you have 2 platforms, 2 islands to work with. So National Airport can stay open. It does not have the same impact as the south of National stations where you only have, where you have to shut it down. At National, what we can do is do 1 platform, wrap it up, and then do the other platform, and that's what's going to happen. So really, the customer impact, and we're putting a marker down and communicating it, but it's not the same scope or scale as what you're seeing right now, for example, out at the end of the orange line, or what you will eventually see, at the upper part of green in the months and years ahead.
Yeah, and just a little bit of inside baseball. Obviously, we're very sensitive to what the airport's doing in their construction. Right. So we didn't want to, if we're at at the high demand that we both would be normally at, then, that influenced it. And just even further detail is literally just a laydown area, the physical, where do you, set all this up? Well, that's totally different when we're both, humming along. When you're not humming along, then maybe you have a few more options. So all those things came into play. We said, all right, let's take care of this issue, get it in there and get out as quick as we can. So that's sort of how we got to that point.
Okay.
Okay.
Gentlemen, stay healthy, stay well.
Guys.
Good talking to you. Good seeing you. Yeah.
Thanks so much, all.
All right. Have a good
Appreciate
afternoon.
it. Talk to you later.
See you. Bye-bye.